Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are going to do the first review of the August 2022 Vinegar Syndrome subscription package. So this is a movie I was going to save for a little while, but I just was really in the mood for a movie like this. And I think I said during the unboxing that I had seen this movie, but I think because of the Red Letter Media episode, I just basically got everything that one could get from this movie from there. So this is the movie directed by William Sachs from the year 1977. And this is The Incredible Melting Man. The best thing I can say about this movie is that Rick Baker did the effects for this movie, and it was one of his first movies that he ever did special effects for. And aside from that, I think King Kong may be one of his earliest. At least that's what he mentions in his interview as being one of his earliest special works or special effects work. But this movie is very hard to say anything really positive about. It's not bad in terms of like, it was so bad that I just did not like it and was angry by it, or had something that personally offended me. Had really none of that. It was just really boring, which I maintain is one of the worst things to be in terms of being a bad movie, is boring. And this movie is quite boring. I don't even know where to start. I will go with my notes for while I was watching the movie. So right off the bat, we start the movie off with some stock footage of the moon landing. Mission, the Apollo mission. And we have some voiceovers. We get very claustrophobic shots of these astronauts, two astronauts in the chairs, just kind of saying, wow, that's a good view. Man, look at that sun. Wow, there's Earth. Very basic lines just about space. And then we get a stock footage clip of a sun flare when the sun erupts a very heavy cloud of radiation, I guess. I'm not a scientist, I have no idea, but that happens, and then we have a little bit of some drama, and then the movie starts with our main astronaut, our lone survivor of whatever just happened, in bed in a cast. And a nurse comes in, and she's getting orders from her doctor. Not her doctor, but the doctor in charge. And he says, oh, you got to make sure you keep your eye on his vitals for the next 15 minutes. And she says, okay, I'll get an orderly. And he says, no, I want you to personally track his vitals. And she says, okay. And then he goes off screen. And then she looks away for a few seconds to write something down on the clipboard. And our incredible melting man is suddenly right there. He gets out of his restraints, which are actually sewn onto the covers of the bed, because when he yanks the blanket off, it's physically on there. It was never actually buckled. I don't think real straps are right there. It's really awkward, but I have a point later on that in terms of inconsistencies throughout the movie. But he gets out of bed, and the woman nurse sees him and says, oh my god, a monster, and runs away. And we get this pretty awesome slow-mo of her running at the camera for a good 37 minutes as she is just running at the camera. And once she gets to the end, she bursts through a glass door. And we get some slightly fun Evil Dead vision where the camera is following her, and there's a little knife or a hand like reaching out from underneath the camera, and she dies, and so begins our pattern. Unfortunately, the first kill is the best one, of course, outside of later one where somebody is decapitated and the head rolls down a hill into a stream and then down a waterfall. And that one in specific, I have a good feeling that Rick Baker fought to have that happen because it is a lovely head explosion that occurs from that. It's kind of bizarre in this film, but all the kills, to mention the pattern again that began with this first kill, every kill in this movie, maybe one towards the end that is not, every kill is off screen. We get to see the effects of it, which is really cool, really nice and bloody, but we actually don't see the kills, which is a huge major downside to these type of movies. And the dialogue is absolutely stiff and awkward and pretty terrible. And the people saying the lines seem to be real working actors. So there's really no way for them to have flubbed it, but I'll go back on that point in a second. But the last thing that I wrote down here, well, there's two last things, is that there is a scene right before the head explosion, the waterfall head explosion, where three kids are playing like some sort of game, and two of them are smoking a cigarette. And this is on screen. This is fully shot like it is right now. It would be as if I was a 7-year-old kid smoking a cigarette. That is what was happening in the movie. I don't know the legality of that scene and whether they were breaking laws when they were filming that, but three kids all smoke a cigarette on screen. And this movie is from 1977, so it's not like super recent, but it's not super old to where they were doing all sorts of crazy stuff on a set and stuff like that. But that was a really awkward scene, and then they find the head explosion, and that's glorious. But it was funny because around minute 40, and I wrote this down because I was shocked. I thought the movie was almost done at minute 40, and I was so happy. I was ready to jump on here and talk my praises for this movie. But then I clicked the little button, the little display button that tells you, you know, your audio, which subtitles you're using, what the runtime is that you've seen, and how much is left. And out of 40 minutes, at minute 40, I saw that I was actually at minute 40, and I thought the movie was almost done. And there was still about 40 to 50 minutes left in the movie. And that's when I mentally clocked out and I gave up. Because for the rest of the movie, they were doing the exact same thing, looking around for the incredible melting man, which wasn't really all that incredible, which Rick Baker talks about in this interview. But this movie has the worst dialogue. It is purposefully a homage to the 1950s sci-fi, I guess, drive-in theater genre. But I talked about in the unboxing how those type of movies are not my favorite at all. I don't think I like a single 1950s era sci-fi film that isn't from, you know, Tarkovsky or really anyone who knows how to make good sci-fi. That entire genre is basically awesome beginning, 20 minutes of boring sheriffs talking and trying to locate the monster. Another kill happens. 15 minutes of looking for the monster again, but in a different location or in a different side of the office where the sheriffs are drinking their coffee and openly wondering aloud where the monster is, and then we cut to another location where the monster is killing. That's the entire movie, and this is it down to a fucking science. They have that going. They have it very slowly paced, like a 1950s sci-fi film. And that was kind of shocking to me, because I thought they would just say that this was a homage and then not really nail it, but they really nailed it. And for those who really like that genre and like those type of movies, you may like this movie a lot. I do not. This is not a movie that I like specifically, but that's really what I think of the movie. But I did watch a few of the special features. I didn't watch too many because I just did not care. I originally wasn't going to look at it at all. I was just going to eject my disc tray and then put it up on the shelf after reviewing the release. But I pushed through and I watched two interviews, one with the director and Rick Baker. They didn't say what year it was, but I assume it's the 2000s because they're talking about DVD at that point. And the other interview I saw was a newly filmed one with the director, which I don't have much thoughts on, so that will be a very quick one. But the interview with, I was about to say Johnny Sachs, because that's what's written in my phone. Interview with William Sachs and Rick Baker, who, if you don't know who Rick Baker is, he's a legendary special effects guy. He's up there with Tippett, whatever his name is, Phil Tippett. And Rick Baker, I scanned through his IMDb credits, and he has done the first two Star Wars films. He has done Gremlins 2. I assume he also did Gremlins 1 because they used the same guy. For the second Gremlins, I think it was Rick Baker himself said he had no inclination to do another Gremlins because it was so impossible. And then they gave him a lot of money, so he instead decided to just do distinct Gremlins for the entire movie. And I feel so bad for him having to make that many Gremlin characters. But what else has he done? I had it up on the Letterboxd. Of course, it closes out on you when you do that. But I'm going to try to go fast with this. He did the first two Star Wars movies, and then I'm so sorry. Okay, he did the Men in Black movies, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, The Ring, Videodrome. He did American Werewolf in London, Tron Legacy, which is the newer one. The Men in Black films, Ed Wood, which is directed by Tim Burton. My personal favorite of Tim Burton's. The Rocketeer, The Frighteners by Peter Jackson. He did Escape from LA. The Howling, very well known for that one. That one's great. I guess he did the 1990s Psycho. I haven't seen it. I have no interest. He did The Fun House, which is a Tobe Hooper film. He did Body Bags, which is a John Carpenter, Tobe Hooper production. Fun collaboration. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure it is fun, but he also did Matinee, which is a Joe Dante film, probably the last Joe Dante film that I haven't seen. And let's see if there's one more good one. I guess he also did Michael Jackson's Thriller music video, which apparently he did the effects for, and John Landis directed it. I don't like John Landis. And I just realized there's a whole nother section of movies that he has done. See if there's any awesome ones that I can think of. The It's Alive trilogy. Okay, there we go. He also did that. So Rick Baker has a lot of credits in horror movies and cult films in general. So to have him on this, not sleazy, but very low budget movie is a lot of fun. And he talks about how he was working on the King Kong film from the 1990s before working on this, because he was saw somebody was in a gorilla suit he was talking about, and somebody handed him the script for this movie called The Incredible Melting Man. and he said that he immediately reacted with a no, because he began his special effects career with these kind of low budget. I'm trying to think now, because he talks about the old King Kong, but this was filmed in '77, unless there's another King Kong movie that I don't know. Okay, I guess that's the case. It's not the 1990s one that everyone knows. But he discusses how somebody was in a gorilla suit, and he said no to the script because it sounded like very low budget trash that he thought he was better than. So instead of saying no, he instead gave them a really high bid, I guess, into what he would accept. And they accepted his offer without thinking twice. And so he said he was kind of stuck in doing this film. And the figure that he gave them was $10,000 in the 1970s. So, shit ton of money. And they said yes. And I'm sure that's where all the budget went. And Rick Baker, throughout the entire interview, this is about, I think, 18 minutes or so, he is just so regretful to his methods of The Incredible Melting Man. He talks about how he wished he could have made it more chunky and having more body parts actually fall off the melting man throughout the film. He talks about how a lot of it just looks so bad, like the ear in the tree just looks like pizza hanging off a tree, which he says himself. And we then cut to, because I was writing just about everything at this point of the interview, the director, William Sachs, comes in, and he is... I don't know how to describe him in a neutral way, but I feel like a lot of his stories that he would tell on this release were total BS. It really seemed like he wasn't talking about reality. He was embellishing everything that he was talking about. And in particular, he talked about how he had a lot of fights with the producers. And he talks about how he was pushing for this movie to become a comedy, like a dot comedy, I think he says. And he talks about how the producers would not budge on it, and they asked Rick Baker about this. They're like, hey, was this movie a comedy? And Rick Baker says it was never a comedy, and that the only comedy came from the bad acting and the bad script. A little harsh in my opinion, but I thought that was really interesting for him to say, because I got these little hints of kind of over-the-top comedy going on throughout the movie, especially the beginning, which is what he was pointing towards as his major evidence that he wanted to do something more funny. But the rest of the movie, according to him, is so close to his vision that it's really hard to see how he could have made it more funny. Because he says that the movie was close to the script, and Rick Baker himself says that the script did not even hint towards any comedy, and that if it was a very awkward-based sort of comedy. And I don't know. One really funny point about this that Rick Baker says is that anybody who likes this movie must have been 10 years old when they saw the movie for the first time, because watching any other movie from this time period, especially 77, the year before Dawn of the Dead, which, if you haven't seen my George Romero tier list or ranking with Will that I filmed, I guess, last week or the week before, you should go watch that. That movie is I wouldn't say masterpiece of special effects. I think Day of the Dead is where Tom Savini really shines, but just a year later is a much better, I guess, encapsulation of makeup effects than this movie. And it's funny that Rick Baker was just so matter of fact about that, about how nobody likes this movie. And if you do, then you were a kid when you saw it for the first time, and you have that bit of nostalgia that helps it. But I've already mentioned this, but Baker was really annoyed by how little the monster was kind of shifting and changing throughout the film. He says he wish he could have had more gradual melting than him already being mostly melted the first time we see the Incredible Melting Man. And he said he would have given him more body parts for it to melt off of him and have it be a full body melting man instead of just the head. Because for most of the movie, the guy who is playing the melting man is wearing like a gray jumpsuit. So it's just more like the Incredible Melting Head is more what the movie should be called. But he was also pissed by the fact that the monster was really never filmed, and if it was always at the end of the day when they had no sun left, aside from the intro sequence. But he also discussed how awful that the original cut of the movie was. They had 2 editors for this project. The first one edited the film, and nobody was happy with it. No one could even excuse it, or really excuse any of the bad filmmaking, or just any of the bad elements. They couldn't even turn it into a movie, is what Rick Baker was saying. He said it was absolutely awful, and the director himself says it was awful, so they brought in a new editor, and said that was kind of the biggest bump for them, for this film to be somewhat known by cult horror fans. But he oh my gosh, there was something I was gonna say, but it's sort of like how the original Return of the Living Dead, I guess it's a somewhat relevant story, but the original I guess special effects artist for Return of the Living Dead was somebody who was not good at all in special effects. And so they hired on a new guy to do the special effects, and I love the special effects of Return of the Living Dead. I think they are great, and I'm very happy that they replaced him, and I guess I'm very happy that they replaced the original guy too on this movie, because it's watchable. It's just really boring. It's every 1950s sci-fi film. But there was another funny story that Rick Baker talks about where the actor who was playing the melting man was just some guy from Italy who did a lot of the dubbing for Italian movies. And if you don't know what that is about, Italy and many other European countries, I think even I'm trying to think. There was a movie recently. Oh, China. I guess Hong Kong. Separate. Hong Kong used to not record on-set audio, and that's what Italy and all those other European countries did too at the time. But especially Italy and Hong Kong, they would record no audio on set, and so they would dub it all later. And this actor was one of those dubbers for, Human Male number 2, or whatever role that he had to say the lines for in English. And Rick Baker was talking about how he showed up on the set and was talking like a big talk, and was saying how awesome he was and how world famous he was, and was like getting in Rick Baker's face about it. And Rick Baker told him, and this is a quote, "I don't know you, and you're playing the fucking Incredible Melting Man, so calm down." When he was telling that story, I laughed out loud, because that is such a, I guess, humiliating thing to be the target of. especially when you're acting like that. And Rick Baker just fucking tore that guy down. And apparently they had no issues after that and were able to do the jobs just well after Rick Baker told him that. And I would have been humiliated and given up as an actor if the legendary Rick Baker ever told me that. And kind of the last thing that I wrote down from this interview, it's a pretty short interview. I recommend everybody to watch it if you have this release, is that the director pointed to two characters in specific, the general and then the wife of our main character. He says those two, he purposely had them overact and be over the top in order to kind of offset the normalcy of this film. And I did not get that impression at all from those two characters. They just acted like people in a movie, in a 1950s sci-fi film. And they showed a clip of them separately, of them being crazy and over the top, and they were just delivering lines. It was nothing spectacular. I did not notice that at all during my viewing. Maybe. The director was acting as if this movie was the biggest success in satirizing sci-fi films. I don't know the exact wording, but he thinks himself a auteur of, I guess, cult films instead of mainstream films, because that is one thing I kind of feel bad about, which I'll get into later a lot more deeply. But this guy was definitely fucked over during the filming of this movie and the release of it, just everything. But that's really it on the first interview that I listened to, and the next one is just with the director, William Sachs. It's a new interview, newly filmed. It's not sourced and reused from a previous release. I'm not sure where the interview that I just spoke about came from, but it's old. So basically, this is a new one with the director. He's quite a bit older than in the other one, and he is very long-winded, is really all I can say about this interview. He talks about his life, and he only talks about his life, which I think would be a very nice resource for somebody who is doing research or just going through his movies. But looking him up after the fact, after watching this movie and looking up his Letterboxd kind of list of movies, he hasn't done much, if not anything. He's done a lot of smaller movies, which he discusses in this interview, but he never really had as big of a success as this movie. And this is a 31-minute interview, by the way, of just him, kind of just talking. And 25 out of 31 minutes of this is him talking about his life, which is fine, whatever. But he really talks about the minutia of his life. He starts from literally, I think, elementary school, maybe middle school, talking about how he always viewed himself as a writer, and he talked about all the different stories he wrote throughout middle school and high school, and then how he got into film school by failing out of business school, and then he joined the Army or the U.S. Air Force, and then using that this guy details his entire life, which is fine. I guess I just did not hit the interview that I wanted, because after this I was done watching these interviews. Throughout the entirety of him talking about the movie, or at least talking about his life, they talk about or they show images from the movie just completely out of context, and it's just okay. Now, the part where he was actually talking about the movie was not as interesting. I guess, as his life, because it's like 4 minutes of the entire runtime. And he does talk about working with Dean Cundey, who, if you don't know who Dean Cundey is, he does a lot of John Carpenter movies. He did Jurassic Park. I think he did E.T. Basically, world-renowned cinematographer. He talks about working with Dean Cundey on this movie called Galaxina, and that's really all that he talks about. And every time by the way, this is something I noticed, that every time he talked about anybody who worked in the industry and who is more successful than him, Dean Cundey, whoever else I've mentioned, he always added like a snide comment about them. And sometimes it would just be like, oh, world renowned. Oh, Grammy Emmy award winner, all these little things that he would add after every mention of these people. And I have a feeling that he is not happy with where he is, I guess, in terms of filmmaking. Because he just seemed very, I wouldn't say toxic, but he just seemed very disappointed about life, which I totally get. Very hard not to be disappointed with life. But I think it was just one too many. It started to become noticeable when he would act that way. But that interview is called It's a War, and there's nothing... I don't want to say there's nothing of value to be earned from this, as everything you earn from the previous interview covers everything that's covered in this new one. So it might be good to watch the new interview first and then watch the old one. Yeah, I really have nothing else to say about this release. Would I have bought it without the subscription? No. I have known about this movie. I know nobody really likes it. I love the slipcover. It looks great on the shelf. The first new horror creature. And I don't think anybody even likes The Incredible Melting Man. Unless you saw this when you were 10 years old, as Rick Baker says. But it's fine. It's not like so bad it's funny, or it's like so offensive to watch that it at least like engages you and makes you interact with it. With this movie, you're just sitting there. And it got to a point where I was just playing on my phone, just going down Reddit, looking at Letterboxd, just doing anything else than watching the movie. And when I would start hearing people screaming, I would look up and start watching, and then they would finish, and I would go back. I guess it's the modern day equivalent to what was happening in the drive-in theaters. Instead of me having sex with my babe in between all the cool scenes, I'm just sitting alone on my phone. I did not like this movie. I would not recommend it at all. I don't think this had any sort of reaction when it was announced. I'm trying to remember. I recall there were a few people who were like, oh, sick. Like, pretty cool cover. Like, another Gloop movie. Which a Gloop movie is one of those melty movies, like Body Melt. The Blob, the remake. Yeah, I have nothing else. Thank you all so much for watching. And I don't know what I'll review next, but The Birds 2 is one that's supposed to be horrible, so I may watch that next. Thank you all for watching, and please have a great rest of the week.